Hello and welcome to Raus IAS. I am Pooja and this is the Daily News Simplified for the date 14 December 2023. So for today's discussion, we have picked 6 important topics, 4 of which are for prelims and 2 of which are for mains discussion. Now for prelims discussion, we have these 4 topics. First is the types of hydrogen. Now why we have chosen this topic is because hydrogen as it is an green hydrogen is an important fuel for energy security of the country, right? The second topic is regarding Employees Provident Fund Organization, which is an important statutory organization, right? The third topic is regarding Parliamentary Committee on Security. Why we have chosen this is because there was an security breach yesterday in the Parliament of India, and based on which we have made this question. And now another MCQ is on RoDTEP scheme, which is an important export promotion scheme, right? Now for mains discussion, we have picked 2 topics. First of which is regarding COP28, which has which was which was sorry. This COP28 was started since November 30 and it was finalized yesterday, right? And the final topic is regarding fiscal issues, fiscal federal issues. This is regarding an issue of Kerala with central government, that central government is meddling with the finances of the state, right? So as we proceed in the article, as we proceed in the discussion, we will gain more insights regarding these topics. But before it, if you like our video, give a thumbs up and you can share these videos and subscribe to our channel. Now let's proceed the discussion. Now, our first topic for today's discussion is inspired from this article which appeared on the page number 15 of Indian Express. Now, this article is particularly regarding some renewable energy companies who are registered as SEZs, right? So, what happens is that these renewable energy companies, if they are producing green hydrogen and if they produce green hydrogen for their own consumption, right, then these companies are not given any financial benefits, okay? But if these renewable energy companies are producing green hydrogen for export purposes, then in that case they are given some financial benefits, right? So this news article is regarding that under the new SEZ rules, the renewable energy companies who are producing green hydrogen for their internal use also, and they are also eligible to get financial compensation from the government, okay, or some kind of financial benefits from the government. Now this news may not be that important for UPSC perspective, but for from this article we have framed a question on hydrogen, regarding the types of hydrogen, right? As in the year 2015 we saw a question which was regarding fuel cells and particularly regarding hydrogen fuel cells, right? So let's solve this question, which says that consider the following pairs. These are different types of hydrogen and you have to match these pairs with their sources. Now, before solving this question, let's understand a few points regarding hydrogen. So what is hydrogen? Hydrogen is an energy fuel, and if we talk about green hydrogen, it can offer a major alternative to polluting fossil fuels, right? So hydrogen is an energy fuel. And how is hydrogen produced? Hydrogen can be produced through various processes. Earlier it was produced, or majority of hydrogen is still produced by the process of gasification, right? By the process of gasification. And in this process can take place with the help of coal, with the help of natural gas. And in this process, coal is gasified, and in that the outcome is certain gases like CO2, carbon monoxide, and along with this, hydrogen is also produced. But this kind of hydrogen which is produced through gasification process, this is not environment friendly, right? because along with the hydrogen we get many greenhouse or polluting gases, right? So there is an alternative method which is electrolysis of water. So electrolysis of water, this is a method by which the molecule of water, by the use of energy, or simply you can see this diagram here, by the passes of current, this water molecule can be broken down into its constituents, that is hydrogen and oxygen, right? So in this manner, hydrogen can be produced and this hydrogen can be stored for commercial use, right? But what is the energy source used here? Such sources, based depending on these sources, depending on the sources through which hydrogen can be produced, hydrogen can be classified into various types. So now let's see what are the types of hydrogen based on it. Based on the energy source, the first kind of hydrogen is black hydrogen. So this is a kind of hydrogen which is produced in gasification process, and the source used here is bituminous coal or black coal, right? Another type of hydrogen is brown hydrogen. So this is the kind of hydrogen which is also produced through gasification process, but the source here is lignite coal, okay, or brown coal. And the third type of hydrogen is gray hydrogen. And in this the source here is natural gas. Instead of coal, this is produced through a process using natural gas, right? And in all these processes, the associated emissions are released in the air. That's why this kind of hydrogen is not clean fuel, right? Now there is other type of hydrogen which is known as blue hydrogen. Now what is this hydrogen? This is also produced, the source here is natural gas, but the carbon emissions which are associated in the production, these are captured and stored underground by the process called carbon capture and storage. And this is the process which we are going to see further in the article related to COP28, right? So as this carbon is stored, that's why this is a cleaner alternative as compared to the above, as compared to black hydrogen, brown hydrogen and gray hydrogen, right? Apart from this, there is a pink hydrogen. Pink hydrogen, this is produced by the process of electrolysis, which we discussed earlier. That is a passes of current to produce hydrogen, passes of current in water to produce hydrogen and oxygen, right? So under this process of electrolysis, the energy source is nuclear power, right? And as you know, nuclear energy is a clean energy, so this does not produce any kind of carbon dioxide emissions, right? And another type of hydrogen which is a viable alternative to fossil fuels is green hydrogen, right? So green hydrogen is produced through electrolysis, and this is used through, and the energy source here is renewable power. That is the renewable power, say from winds, say from solar, any kind of renewable energy, if that is the source for electrolysis of water, and the hydrogen thus produced is known as green hydrogen. Other kind of hydrogen is yellow hydrogen, and this is produced through electrolysis of water using solar power. Green hydrogen is produced using renewable energy, right? And another kind of hydrogen is turquoise hydrogen, and such kind of hydrogen is produced by methane pyrolysis or by splitting of methane. Technically, this is a methane molecule, and under this process, methane is splitted into hydrogen, right? If I balance this equation, so hydrogen and the byproducts are hydrogen and solid carbon, right? So in this kind of hydrogen is known as turquoise hydrogen, right? So now these are the types of hydrogen which you need to remember, right? Now based on this information, let us solve this practice question. Our practice question says that we have to match these sources. So the first question, the first option is black hydrogen. Is it produced from fossil fuels? Yes, as coal is also a kind of fossil fuel, right? Pink hydrogen, is it produced through methane pyrolysis? This is wrong because this is produced through this nuclear power, right? So this is incorrect. Turquoise hydrogen, this is produced through methane pyrolysis, right? This is also incorrect. And green hydrogen, renewable sources, this is correct, right? So how many pairs are correctly matched? The answer is B, as only 2 pairs are correctly matched. Now let's move on to our next topic for today's discussion. This is regarding this article which appeared on page number 15 of Indian Express. Now the contents of this article are not that important for you, but from this article we have framed a question on EPFO. which is an important statutory organization, right? So now why we have taken this question is because UPSC asks questions regarding various constitutional bodies, non-constitutional bodies, regarding various statutory bodies, which are important statutory bodies, right? For example, in the year 2022, we found this question which was on T-board, right? Now let's solve a question regarding EPFO. But before solving this question, let's see a few facts regarding EPFO, right? So EPFO is a statutory organization which was formed through, as the full form of EPFO is Employee Provident Fund Organization, right? So it was formed through Employee Provident Fund and Miscellaneous Act of 1952, right? It was formed in 1952 through this act, right? So what is the function of EPFO? The function of EPFO is regulation and management of some. EPFO is an important social security organization in the country. It can be included as one of the largest social security organization of the world, right? So what is the function of EPFO? It is to regulate and manage certain social security scheme, and this is provided these scheme or these facilities are only provided to organized workers, right? These schemes are Employee Provident Fund, right? Employee Pensions Scheme, Employee Insurance. So these are some of the services which are provided by EPFO, right? And EPFO, and so who are the stakeholders in EPFO? Now, to provide these services, the first stakeholder is government, right? And if we talk about government, both central government as well as state government, right? So first stakeholder, who is the second stakeholder? The employer, who is employing the organized workers, right? Who is the third stakeholder? The third stakeholders are employees who are working in any organized institution, right? So these three are the stakeholders. Now let's end. EPFO is under the Ministry of Labor and Environment and Employment, sorry. Now based on this information, let's solve this practice question, right? Now this question says, the act and schemes framed by EPFO are administered by a central board of trustees consisting of representatives from central and state government only. Now see, this statement is incorrect because I told you that there are three stakeholders. Apart from central and state governments, the central board of trustees of EPFO consists of employer as well as employees, right? So any act and scheme are framed by EPFO by consultation through all these stakeholders. So this is an incorrect statement. Now let's move on to our second statement, which says that the board operates pension and insurance schemes for the workforce engaged in the organized sector in India. Now this is a correct statement. The third statement says that the organization is under the administrative control of Ministry of Finance. Now this is an incorrect statement as it is under the Ministry of Labor and Employment, right? Now as the question asked, how many of the statements given above is or are correct? The correct answer would be only one, right? Now let's move on to our third question for the day. Now this is regarding a security lapse in the parliament yesterday, right? So generally, to avoid such kind of security breaches or security lapse, there is a parliamentary committee on security, right? So this is kind of ad hoc committee, okay? Ad hoc committee, and means these are such kind of committees which are formed for a particular period of time, right? And to inquire into some special instances, right? And if we talk about Parliamentary Committee of Security, so this is a joint parliamentary committee. Joint parliamentary committee means as parliament is central and it comprises of Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha and President also, but as it comprises of two houses, right? Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, that's why any committee to oversee the security of parliamentary, the members of parliament, the other staff which is employed in the parliament, or in general to ensure the safe proceedings of the parliament, there is a committee for it, right? So it is a joint parliamentary committee that has members both from Rajya Sabha as well as Lok Sabha, right? And this committee, what does it do? It frames the guidelines on the security of members of parliament, staffs of parliament, and to ensure the smooth functioning or safe functioning of the parliament, right? So this joint parliamentary committee is headed by the speaker of Lok Sabha. Okay. So this is the basic information regarding the Parliamentary Committee on Security. But the news article is that there should be a Parliamentary Committee on Security, but since last 5 years, this committee is defunct. That is, no such committee has been constituted, right? So this is the crux of this article, right? Now, based on this information, now why we have taken this question is that because UPSC generally asks questions regarding various parliamentary procedures, right? Now, let us solve this practice question. The question says that with reference to the security of parliamentary complex, consider the following statements. The first statement says, each house of the parliament has its own security committee, consisting exclusively of its own members. Now, this is an incorrect statement. As we saw earlier, there is a joint parliamentary committee which consists of members from both Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, right? So there is not a separate security committee. The second statement says that in the Lok Sabha, the committee is headed by a speaker, and in the Rajya Sabha, it is headed by a chairman. Again, this is an incorrect statement because there is just one joint parliamentary committee, and this is headed by the speaker of Lok Sabha. So both of these statements are incorrect, right? The answer would be neither one nor two. Let's proceed further to our final MCQ for the day. This is regarding RoDTEP scheme, right? That is remission of duties and taxes on export products. Now, as the name itself suggests, remission of duties and taxes on export products. So this is a kind of a scheme which is regarding the promotion of exports, right? It is an export promotion scheme in the country. And this article is important for us for the external sector, regarding for questions regarding the export or external sector in economy, right? As in the year 2023, we found this particular question, right? Now, before we so we have framed a question on this scheme, but before we know this, we solve this question, let us see a few basics regarding these schemes, right? Now, as this is a scheme on remission of duties and taxes on export products, right? So it is an export promotion scheme. Now think how the exports of a country can be promoted if the duties and taxes on that product is lower, right? In that sense only, that product would be competitive in the global markets, right? So in order to make Indian exports competitive in global market, there is one such scheme. So there should be remission of some duties and taxes. But one thing, if you should note that the GST, which is goods and services tax on export products, is in 0% slab, right? So already if GST is 0% in export products, so what are those taxes we are talking about here? What are those taxes which are being remitted under this scheme, right? So this is a question which one should think, that what are these other taxes, because GST is already 0. So these are some hidden taxes. Now generally what happens is that whenever a good or whenever any good is manufactured, right from the manufacturing state to the transportation state for import, okay, to the ports or to the final facility for export, right? In that process of manufacturing and the process of transportation, there are certain taxes which are not covered under GST. What are these taxes? These taxes can be local taxes, state taxes, as well as central taxes. Now, for example, local taxes, we can say there can be a mandi tax. In case it is an agricultural good, right? There can be a mandi tax on it. And if we talk about other taxes, say there can be a toll tax, right? in transportation. There can be VAT in the production. If it is coal based, there can be a coal cess, right? So these are certain kind of taxes which are not under GST, right? So that's why in order to remit these hidden taxes, there is a scheme for export promotion. So one thing is clear, that to remit these schemes, this scheme remits these particular taxes, right? Now, the other thing is that, okay, if the taxes are being remitted, how is the compensation being given to these people, to the exporters? How is the compensation being given to them? The thing is that the exporters are not given compensation in money, right? They are given compensation in terms of some duty scripts. So what is duty scripts? Duty scripts is a kind of receipt. This is a kind of receipt which is given to the exporters. Now, these exporters, either they can use this receipt in case if they are importing any product and they have to give custom duty on that product. In that case, in condition of import, they can use this duty script, right? Or either what they can do, if they are just exporters, they don't import anything, they can sell their duty script to any other importer, right? So one important thing to note is that these duty scripts, these are transferable. That is, one exporter can either encash it, right? They can sell it, they can use it by themselves, or they can encash it by selling it to other importers, right? So these scripts are transferable. So these are the important points which one should know about this scheme. Okay. Now, as we have learned about this scheme, so let us solve this practice question. This practice question says that the scheme provides for refund of all direct and indirect taxes imposed at center, state, local level in the form of duty scripts. So this statement will become incorrect. This is because it does not give refund for all kind of direct and indirect taxes, but because some kind of indirect taxes can also be included in GST, right? But this can only give rebate from these hidden taxes, right? Not all kind of direct and indirect taxes. That's why the statement becomes incorrect, right? And yes, this scheme provides refund in form of duty scripts. First statement is incorrect. Now second statement, the duty scripts are non-transferable. Now this is also incorrect, as these duty scripts are transferable, as we already discussed. The third thing is, the duty scripts can be used for the payment of only the basic customs duty. Now this is a correct statement. As I already told you, that any exporter can use this duty script in case he imports something, and in that import he has to give basic customs duty. In that scenario, he can use this duty script, right? So this is a correct statement. Now we have to select the correct answer using the codes given below. So the correct answer would be B, 3 only, right? Now we have seen our prelims questions. Now let's move on to mains topics for the day. So the first topic of our mains discussion today is inspired by this news article, and this news article also appeared on The Hindu also, as the COP28, which is Conference of Parties 28, has been concluded yesterday, right? Conference of Parties 28 has been concluded recently yesterday, and that's why there is there is an article. So we have covered various important takeaways from this conference, right? And we have also covered some misses, which what were some misses regarding this conference, right? That what were the things, or what was the climate actions which could not happen or could not materialize, right? So in this news article we will discuss about COP28. Now this topic is important for our GS paper 3, environment and biodiversity, under the syllabus head conservation, environmental pollution, degradation, environmental impact and assessment, right? Hmm. And based on this question in GS paper 3, based on this theme in GS paper 3 in the year 2021, we found this question. which was regarding the outcomes of 26th COP, Conference of Parties, right? Now let's understand what is Conference of Parties. Conference of Parties is an annual meeting. Annual meetings of whom? Annual meetings of parties. Parties are countries who are members to UNFCCC, right? That is United Nations Convention on Climate Change. That was the first climate treaty by United Nations, which was signed in the year 1992, right? So this is an annual meeting of the parties to UNCCC, right? United Nations frameworks on climate change, right? And this particular organization was made in the year 1992. Now, what was the goal of this organization earlier? It was to reduce the global greenhouse gaseous emissions, right? Now, what is the goal of this conference of parties? The goal of this conference of parties is to take climate action, right? To reduce the impact of climate change to the population and globally, right? So, based on this, there should be climate actions on important themes. If I talk about climate change and climate actions, there are three important pillars of which. First pillar is mitigation, right? Mitigation, that is, for example, limiting the rise of greenhouse gases. It is a kind of mitigation measures to prevent to prevent the impact of climate change, right? So say reducing GHG emissions. For it, say there was an important global action goal, right? That was taken in COP21 in the Paris Climate Deal. It was to limit the rise of temperature, the rise of global average temperature to less than 1.5 degrees centigrade, right? To around 1.5 degrees centigrade. So this was an important milestone which was set in the Conference of Parties 21 Paris, right? So this is an example of mitigation strategies of climate action. The other kind of strategy is adaptation. Now, since we know that climate change is real and we are doing enough, means we should do enough to prevent its impact on the population and globe. But the another thing is adaptation. Since climate change is bound to happen, that's why we have to focus on some strategies to adapt to the changes of climate, to adapt to the new change climate and the impact it does on the biodiversity, on the systems around the earth, right? In that sense, there are some certain techniques which can be used, like, for example, climate smart agriculture. That is one of the techniques for adaptation. And the other thing is finance, right? Now there are some countries which have already been impacted by climate change, right? As we all know that some vulnerable countries like small island developing nations, they have least contributed to the climate change, but these are the countries who are impacted the most by climate change, right? So for these countries there should be a climate finance, right? To prevent the to compensate, basically to compensate for the damage that has been caused by the climate change to these particular countries, right? Small island developing nations and other vulnerable countries, mostly of which are located in global south. So conference of parties is regarding taking climate actions in these three important themes of mitigation, adaptation and climate finance, right? Now since we have seen this, now let's proceed to the major takeaways of COP28, which was held in Dubai, UAE, right? Now, the first major takeaway from this conference or from this COP was that it focused for the first time the transition away from fossil fuels. Now, if we talk about fossil fuel, it comprises it comprises oil, natural gas, coal. So these are fossil fuels, right? And as per an estimate, around 80% of the global greenhouse emissions are emitted because of these fossil fuels, because of this consumption of these fossil fuels, right? Because of burning of these fossil fuels. So as they are important polluter, right? So the first time it was first time an agreement was made that says that yes, there should be steps which should be taken to transition away from fossil fuels, right? And in that sense, some actions should be taken. One thing is, there are certain subsidies which are given in certain countries to fossil fuels, right? For the consumption of fossil fuels. So such subsidies should be removed, right? Such subsidies should be removed, and the fossil fuels, the use of fossil fuels should be phased down to achieve net carbon neutrality. Okay, carbon neutrality till the year 2050. So this is the broader goal of the world, and the consensus has been made to transition away from fossil fuels to achieve carbon neutrality by the year 2050, right? And to achieve carbon neutrality, this is a global goal, but India also has its particular NDCs, which is nationally determined contribution, and as per India, India aims to achieve carbon neutrality till the year 2070. Now, if we talk about carbon neutrality, what does carbon neutrality mean? Carbon neutrality does not mean that there should be no emissions, right? Carbon neutrality means that the emissions, the greenhouse emissions in any country are balanced by certain measures which are adopted by that country, right? That is, these measures, that country can adopt some nature-based solutions like afforestation, reforestation, and other nature-based initiatives, which we will discuss shortly. Also, there should be some technological developments like carbon capturing techniques and carbon dioxide reduction techniques, right? So these are some of the actions, some nature-based and some technological solutions to achieve carbon neutrality by the year 2050, right? And now here, some important, some major developed countries have adopted this goal, right? They are planning to phase away from fossil fuels. The other thing is the phase down of unabated coal. This is one of the feature. This is one of the highlight of COP28, that is the phasing down of unabated coal. Now, if we talk about unabated coal, what is unabated coal? As we know that coal is a major fossil fuel, right? And unabated coal mean, say there is a thermal power plant, right? So it is producing energy, and along with it, there are certain greenhouse gaseous emissions. And now, if this greenhouse gaseous emissions, they are left in the atmosphere, right? So these emissions are not captured, right? These are basically this. There are no such technologies used to capture these emissions. In that sense, this thermal power, the coal which is used in this thermal power station is unabated coal, because these emissions are not captured. So this is the key takeaway, that the countries have agreed that there should be a phase down of unabated coal. So if there should be a phase down, plus any new thermal power plants or any new installation which is using unabated coal there should be a limit there should be a limit to open such new installations, right? And earlier it was mandated that in the draft was that any kind of new thermal installation has to equip carbon capture and storage technology. But this was opposed by the developing countries like China and India. This is because the countries like China and India are developing countries, and the major share of energy production in India and China comes from thermal power, right? So there shouldn't and India, if we talk about India particularly, India is planning to expand its thermal power installation capacity, right? In that sense, there was a condition that any new thermal power plant should be equipped with carbon capturing and storage technology, right? But this was opposed by developing countries. So there is this requirement has been diluted. So now there should be certain kind of limit in opening new thermal power installation. But there has been a consensus of gradual phase down on unabated coal. Okay, so this has been one of the takeaway of COP 2028. The other thing is that the global consensus on tripling the use of renewable energy, right? So there is a consensus to triple renewable energy or the energy from, like, say, solar, wind, tidal, and other such energies till the year 2030, right? Presently, if we see, presently around 3400 gigawatt of energy is produced from renewable sources globally. So this is the global contribution of renewable energy to the power sector, right? To the energy contribution. And if we talk about India, so presently this is the status of global contribution of renewable energy, right? Now it is expected the countries have agreed on to triple this target, right? And the other thing is that, and if we talk about, if we talk about India, India has a particular goal to produce around 500 gigawatt of energy through renewable energy till the year 2030. This is particularly the goal of India. Otherwise, there are global targets to triple the renewable energy production, right? The other thing is the countries have gained consensus on doubling the energy efficiency. Now see, energy is generated from conventional sources and non-conventional sources both, right? But what happens if the systems through which the energy is being channelized, right, or energy is being used in these systems are not efficient? In that sense, the energy will be wasted. So there is a focus to double the energy efficiency of the systems or or the installation. Say there should be smart meters, or there should be other such initiatives such that there should be smart appliances which save or conserve energy, right? So that the energy efficiency of these countries of should double every year till the year 2030. Annually, the energy efficiency of the countries would double. These are the targets of COP28, right? Other thing is that the countries made a consensus on reducing the methane emissions. Now, earlier, if we talked about greenhouse gaseous emissions, major focus have been on reducing the emissions of carbon dioxide. But as if you are aware that methane is a highly potent gas, right? It is also an important greenhouse gas, and the lifespan of methane is relatively low as compared to carbon dioxide. The lifespan of carbon dioxide is around 100 years, but the lifespan of methane is only 12 years. But carbon dioxide is 80 times more potent than carbon dioxide in causing global warming, right? So, considering the great impact, the great potential of methane to cause global warming, first time the countries have agreed to reduce methane emissions, right? Now these are some of the now these goals have been adopted to fulfill a general goal, that is to achieve net carbon neutrality by the year 2050, right? Now for this, another thing is that there should be acceleration of zero emission technologies, right? That is, technology should be used to achieve net neutrality. Now in that case, if we talk about what are the important technologies, we talk about net zero emissions, right? So there are two things which can be done. First is nature based solutions, other thing is technological advancement, right? Now nature based solutions is afforestation, reforestation. So this zero based emissions, the theme is to capture carbon, right? Afforestation, reforestation can capture carbon, right? Another thing is restoration of wetlands. Okay. Another thing is smart agriculture, smart agriculture practices like zero tillage farming, right? like cover cropping, right? And there are other such processes which can be employed in agriculture also, say agroforestry. So these are some nature based solutions, right? And by oxygen, by ocean as carbon sink, right? So this is by, and this can be done by increasing the alkalization of oceans, right? But if we talk about the technologically based solutions, now the major technology which can be used to capture carbon is carbon capture and storage and carbon dioxide removal technologies, right? Now there is a difference between carbon storage technologies and carbon dioxide removal technologies, right? Now the major difference is that carbon dioxide storage technologies, they are employed at the source of emission. Now let's understand this. Say this is a carbon capture and storage technology. The basic theme is that, for example, there is a thermal power plant, right? It is emitting greenhouse gases. So these gases, greenhouse gases, say CO2, basically carbon dioxide, would be captured. This would be captured, and then this would be transported and stored. This can be stored in some places, for example, deep aquifers. In this image, if you can see, these are aquifers, right? So there are natural saline aquifers under the oceans where this carbon dioxide from the source can be captured and then it can be transported, and then these can be stored in form of deep aquifers, right? And these can be also stored in some depleted oil or gas reservoirs. So there could be some reservoirs of oil or gas which are depleted, and now this carbon can be stored there, right? And under some, say, coal bed methane reservoir which has been depleted, and carbon can be stored there, right? So this is a technique in which carbon is directly tapped from the source and then it is stored underground, right? It is one of the technique which can be used for to achieve zero based emissions, right? Other thing is that there is another technique which is CDR, carbon dioxide removal technique, right? And in this technique, these are some of the techniques which can be also employed for CDR. But basically, if we talk about technology, there are certain types of installations. If we talk about smoke towers, so smoke tower is also a kind of carbon dioxide removal technique. The theme of this technique is that there is certain kind of installation with fans in it, right, which sucks in air. Okay, it pulls air. This is polluted air, right? This polluted air is, there are some filters inside this. If we talk about smoke towers, there are some filters inside these smoke towers, and these fans also have some filters, right? So this carbon dioxide is somehow stored there. In these filters it is stored, and then this carbon dioxide can be transported to some other places, and either it can be stored or it can be utilized, right, for some purposes. So this is by using certain kind of installation. Basically, the countries agreed on installing more technology or adopting more solutions, say nature based solutions, in order to achieve zero carbon emissions. Now, one important takeaway of COP28 is that there was an operationalization of of loss and damage fund. Now, as I told you earlier, there are three pillars of climate finance, of climate action, right? First of which is mitigation, another is adaptation, and third is climate finance, right? And for fulfilling this leg of climate action, there will be a loss and damage fund which would be operationalized, right? And for 4 years, World Bank would act as a host of this fund, right? Basically, this fund is a voluntary fund, and in which there are major contributions from developed countries, right? And even developing countries can contribute in this fund. Till date, the funds of the order of 800 million has been accumulated in this fund. The concept, the this fund was already approved in COP27 last year in Egypt, but now this has been operationalized. This is the major takeaway of COP28, right? So there would be voluntary contributions in this fund, and around 800 million has already been collected in this fund, right? And now this fund would be used to cover the damage, especially to the vulnerable countries. The major chunk of this fund has been kept aside to support the damage done to the infrastructure and other damage done to the vulnerable countries by climate change, right? And if we talk now, let's see. Now this is all about loss and damage fund, right? Now another thing is that there has been a draft. There a draft has been prepared on global goal on adaptation. Now see, there have been a goal on mitigation. The Paris climate deal did a goal on mitigation, that is to limit the global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius. It is a kind of global goal on mitigation, right? But there has not been any global goal on adaptation. Now, as we talked earlier, what is adaptation? Adaptation is to make population and our surroundings resilient to the impact of climate change, right? And in that sense we need some adaptation strategies. But since we know that adaptation strategies are local in nature, right? For example, if we talk about adaptation strategies of Africa, there have been a green wall initiative. A green wall of forest has been formed in the Sahel region of Africa, that is to provide food security and to lessen the impact of climate change, right? So these are some global solutions, these are some local solutions also, but there should be some global solutions also, right? And for that, nothing concrete has been done, but a draft on global goal of adaptation has been made, right? Now these are some of the important takeaways which we can see from climate COP28. Now let's see what are the limitations of it. The first limitation is that if we talk about, the goal is transition away from fossil fuels. The goal is phase down of unabated coal. The goal is to reduce methane emissions. But there have been not a timeline. There is no fixed timeline. So the first thing is lack of, there is no fixed timeline, right? So for all these, for fossil fuel phase down reduction, right? For coal phase down, for methane reduction, right? There is no fixed timeline. And no accountability mechanism has been set. That is, there is no mandatory action which the developed countries should take in order to compensate for their historical contributions of carbon, right? So accountability, there is no mandatory accountability mechanism, right? The other thing is that if we see this vertical, which was tripling renewable energy and doubling energy efficiency, but here we see that there is a global target for it. But there is no individual target. Plus, this is not mandatory, right? So first thing is lack of individual targets for the countries. Another thing is that this is not mandatory, right? And in case of loss and damage fund, which we have seen that the fund, though it is still being operationalized, but the contribution to this fund is currently of the order of 800 million. But if we talk about the loss to the vulnerable countries, it has been, till date, it has been of the order of $1.5 trillion. So there has been loss to the order of 1.5 trillion, but this fund is in millions only, and this may not be sufficient, right? Also, this fund is voluntary in nature, right? So these are some of the limitations of COP28, and hopefully this will be made these limitations. There will be work on these limitations in the next COP29, right? Which is to be scheduled at Azerbaijan. Now let's move on to our next topic for today, and the last topic for today, which is regarding the issue of fiscal federalism in the country. So this news appeared on uh, multiple sections of the newspaper. It appeared on the Hindu and Indian Express also. So the basic context of this news article is that Kerala has approached Supreme Court, citing that central government is meddling in the state finances of Kerala. That Kerala is resource strained, and that's why it needs more borrowing. But this is not being permitted by central government, or there are certain kind of restrictions which the central government has made on the state, and because of which the state is not able to meet its revenue expenditure as well as capital expenditure, right? So this is regarding fiscal federalism, or devolution of finances to the state, and how central government controls the devolution of finances to the states, right? So this is the case of Kerala in particular, but we will see this article in general, that what is this issue all about, right? Now this article is important for our GS paper 3 economy. This is important under the syllabus head mobilization of resources. Now let's understand the basics of this article. The first thing is that if we see that how the state gets its finances, right? And particularly if we see how the central government is sharing finances, sharing the divisible pools of taxes with the states, right? So for this, what central government does is that from the, say this is divisible pool of taxes of central government. Say central government has a divisible pool of taxes, right? And from this divisible pool, there is certain portion is with central government, and certain portion the central government devolves or gives it to the state, right? So particularly there are two kind of grants which the central government gives to states. The first kind of grant is statutory grant, right? So under such kind of grant, central government, the statutory grants are provided by the central government to the states based on the recommendations of the Finance Commission, right? So based on the recommendations of Finance Commission, these grants will be provided to the state. And what are these grants? The first thing is the share of taxes to the states from the divisible pools of taxes from the central government, right? Now this was what I was talking about. Now in this, central shares the share to state government based on a formula which is formulated by Finance Commission. If we talk presently, this is formulated by the 15th Finance Commission, right? Now this is the first source of earning for the state. Now what is the second source of earning for the state? The second source of earning from the state is local body grants. Now if we talk about local bodies, they were included in the constitution in the 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act and 74th Constitutional Amendment Act, right? And these local bodies, primarily the money to these local bodies is given by the state government, right? But central government can also give money or finances or grants to these local bodies, right? So the second type of grant which the state gets under statutory grant is grants to the local bodies, right? That is municipalities and parliament, municipalities and panchayats. The third is revenue deficit grant. Now revenue deficit grant is not this is not granted to all the states. This is granted to particular states on the recommendation of Finance Commission, right? And why it is this is known as revenue deficit grant? So it is a post devolution grant, that is after the center has shared this first kind of devolution to the state, after which the central will share this revenue deficit grants to certain states who are not able who are not able to meet their revenue expenditure. In that case, they will be shared revenue grants, right? And other case of other type of grant is performance based grants, which is given to the states. And now this is performance based grant. These grants are based on certain specific sectors, that is performance of states on certain specific sectors. Say the performance of a state based on its education sector, its performance based on its agriculture sector. Say for example, how the implementation of land leasing laws, contract farming laws, depending on the implementation of these laws, right? That how efficient is the implementation of these laws. And regarding other, say there are other factors also. And based on the performance of these states, these are certain kind of grants, right? And apart from these statutory grants, there are certain discretionary grants which are granted by the center to the states. And now what are these discretionary grants? These are given to the states in form of central plan assistance. That is, the assistance is given in form of centrally sponsored scheme. Say the assistance is given in the scheme of Manrega for Ayushman Bharat Yojana, right? For such schemes, these kind of central plan assistance is given to the states. Now, in this state, in this scenario, let us expand one particular grant, which is share to the states from the divisible pools of taxes. Now, I already told you this is a share of pool. This is a share to the states based on the recommendation of Finance Commission, right? Now, let us see. So, this is the divisible pool of taxes with central government, right? Now, based on the recommendation of 15th Finance Commission for the year 2021-26, this devolution has to be 41%. That is, from this pools of taxes, this devolution would be 41% to the states, right? And the remaining amount would be capped with the central government, right? Say 59% would be with central government and 41% would be with states. Now we are talking about this 41%. Now this 41% would be divided among all the states of the country, right? This kind of division of this particular share is known as horizontal distribution. The prior mentioned distribution is vertical distribution. This is horizontal distribution of grants, right? Now this horizontal distribution of grants to the state, it is based on some particular criteria. The first criteria is income distance. Now what does this mean? This means that, say there are 3 states in the country. This is state 1, this is state 2, and this is state 3. This is state 3, right? Say this state 1 is the poorest state of the country, and this state 3 is the richest state of the country. Now we are talking in terms of the state GDP of the country. State GDP of the country. Now, in case of state GDP of the country, say this is the richest state. So the poorest state will have more income distance as compared to, say, state 2, which lies in between state 1 and state 2, right? Hence, state 1 is poorest, or it has the maximum income distance. So based on this criteria, this state would get maximum grant, right? So there is a weightage of 45% for this criteria based on income distance. And this state GDP is averaged for the period of 3 years, right? For the period of 3 years, which state has the maximum state GDP. Another criteria is geographical extent of the states. This means that the state with the large geographical extent is going to get more grants. Other thing is based on the census of 2011, right? Based on the population, as per the census of 2011, this is one of the criteria, and this has been given 15% weightage, right? But now see, if any state is that is more the population of that state, more is the weightage or the grants, more grants are given to that state. But now see, there are certain states in the country, say southern states of the country, they have done a lot in order to stabilize the population of those states, right? And there are certain northern states in the country where the population is huge, right? So in that case, the population, the state with maximum population is getting more grant, and the state with lower population is getting less grant. So it may be discriminatory to the state who have done enough in order to stabilize their population, right? So in order to address this challenge, there is another important criteria, which is demographic performance, right? So this demographic performance means the state which has performed good in reducing the total fertility rate. Based on the performance of states on reducing the total fertility rate, the states are given grants, right? And other parameter is forest and ecology. This is based on the presence of dense forest cover in any state. The state which has more dense forest cover is going to get more grant. This is in order to compensate that state in case it is lagged in industrial sector. This means that suppose there is a Himalayan state which has a large forest cover, right? But that state may have less developed industrial sector, because in order to develop industries, say major forests have to be cleaned out. But this is going to harm the green GDP of the country, right? So that's why the states, in order to compensate its industrial backwardness, or in order to compensate for all these effects, the state with maximum forest cover or dense forest cover are given more weightage, right? Other thing is the tax and fiscal efforts. This means that the state which are working more towards the states which are working efficiently in distribution of taxes, they will get better grant, right? This does not mean that this does not equate to greater tax collection. This equates to the efficient tax collection in any country. Any state which is working on tax collections efficiently is going to get more grant, okay? So these are devolution of taxes which the center devolves to the states based on the recommendations of 15th Finance Commission. Now if you've seen that this is the devolution, and let me tell you a trend. Earlier, the devolution of taxes, which presently is 41% to the states, it was earlier around 28%, right? In the recent years, the central government has increased the devolution. This ratio has been increased. This devolution ratio to the states have been increased in recent years. Now, despite this, the states have a persistent complaint that their devolution, the amount which has been devolved to them is shrinking. Now, let's understand that what is the reason behind it. Since we saw that this devolution ratio has increased from 28% to 41%, but still the actual devolution to states is not there. Now, the major reason for this is that you should listen carefully. For example, just for understanding, right? Just for understanding, say 70% of centrals, say 70% of 70% of centrals receipt are in form of taxes, okay, 70%, and say 30% are in form of surcharges, okay, or cess. And now in second scenario, say 50% taxes and 30% and 50% surcharges or cess. Now earlier what happened was that one more concept which you should know is that only the taxes, the central government is mandated to share only taxes with the state government. The central government is not mandated to share the amount of surcharges or cess with the state governments, right? This is the first thing which one should know. Now earlier what happened that the central government was sharing states from this 70% share of taxes. But now what central government has done is that central government has reduced, after the implementation of GST, central government has reduced the taxation, reduce the amount of taxes, okay, reduce the percentage of taxes. But on the other hand, central government has increased surcharges and cess on various goods and services. Now as a result, what happens is that the tax base of central government has narrowed, but the surcharge or cess base of central government has increased, right? Now the states are getting 41% from this 50%, which was earlier say 70%, right? These are just hypothetical numbers. But because of this narrow, because the tax base has become narrow, that's why the finances, the grants to the states are shrinking, right? That's why the grants are shrinking. So this is the first thing. And in this chart, if you see here in this chart, if we move from left hand side to right hand side, this shows that the value of cess and surcharge has increased in the gross revenue received of the central government, right? And this is one of the reason that the finances or the grants of state government have been shrinking, right? This is the major reason. The other thing is that the central government has applied a ceiling on the state government's borrowing. Now what does this means that under the article 293 of Indian Constitution, say a state government, if it has taken earlier, if a state government has taken loan from the central government, now if the state government wants to take another loan, right, there is a limit which the central government will put, that beside which the state government will not be able to take further loan, right? So this is known as ceiling on a state borrowing. Now in the present budget for this year, the borrowing limit for the state is 3.5% of state GDP, right? So this borrowing limit earlier, it was more than 3.5%, but this limit has been narrowed, right? Now states cannot take more loan exceeding 3.5% of the state GDP. So this is one factor that central government has put a ceiling on state government's borrowing, right? Now this has to be seen with third issue. Third issue is that there are restrictions on the off budget borrowing in the state government. Now for this, let's understand what are off budget borrowing. Now off budget borrowing is the loans which are taken by the public sector undertaking of the state government, right? And in order to aid the expenditure of state, that is, these are the borrowings which the state is not taking directly, but the public sector undertakings of the state is taking this loans, right, in order to aid the state government. And such kind of loans, these are not reflected in the fiscal deficit of state government, right? So what was the advantage of off budget borrowing? The advantage was that the state government could take more loan, right? Because this fiscal deficit window of the state government was increased, right? That's why the state government could take more loan in form of loan and in form of off budget borrowing. But now, since financial year 2022, central government has said that in the loans of the state government, this off budget borrowing would also be included. Earlier, off budget borrowing was not included in the loans of state government, but now this off budget borrowing is also included in the loans of state government. That's why this has also put a ceiling on state government's borrowing, right? So these are some of the factors. The final factor is that because of the implementation of GST regime, that is goods and services tax, the finances of state government have narrowed. Now earlier what happened was that before GST, the state government was able to put numerous taxes in its goods and services, right? So these taxes, the state government had flexibility to increase or decrease these taxes, say to increase the taxes on any particular goods or service, right? But now after the implementation of GST, there is a GST council, right, which determines the particular value of tax on particular goods and services, right? So in that case, the state government cannot increase its revenue share by increasing the tax on its goods and services, right? As because of the rollout of GST, and these taxes are fixed by GST council, right? So these are the some of the issues which are uh, which are which are uh, which are affecting the finances of state government, right? And now what government has done in order to in order by seeing this, in order to compensate the states, what government has done is that government, since after the rollout of GST, there was significant loss, revenue loss for the state government. GST was rolled out in 2017, so government has given 5-year compensation, GST compensation to the state. This is one initiative government has taken. Another initiative what government has taken, that government has given states the window of 5 years, say 4 years, till the year 2026. These state governments, they have given a window to ease off their off budget borrowings, right? To clean their off budget borrowings. So this is the window the state governments are given till the year 2026. And thirdly, till the year 2050, sorry, the thirdly is that the government has given 50-year interest free loans. Government is giving since last year, government is giving 50-year interest free loans to state government in order to boost their capital expenditure or the expenditure on their infrastructure. In order to increase their capital expenditure, central government is giving states interest free loans for 50 years, right? So these are some of the initiatives which have been taken by the government in this regard. So this brings an end to today's session. Stay connected for more updates. Thank you.